Devon Larratt has one of the longest arms in the game, even though he doesn't have the longest, but the lights are always on his leverage due to the fact that he's the most efficient arm wrestler and knows how to use it in his advantage. Long forearms help with back pressure-driven movements. In other words, top rolling and rising. Another one is long hand attached to a long forearm is usually big hand, which is obviously massively important. Furthermore, a longer forearm has more potential to build bigger and more muscle, which is why if you're looking at every sport, the taller guys have more absolute strength at the top end of competitions, like weightlifting, strongman, etc. That is not only true for the forearm itself, but for every other arm wrestling related muscle group. The general rule is long forearm means big hand, more muscle capacity. The longer forearm will likely be on top as well. If you're under someone, your leverage advantage isn't really there anymore. So, as we know, the reality is that those with longer arms tend to have the advantage in arm wrestling matches. The reason longer arms give an advantage instead is that in an arm wrestling match, assuming identical proportions between opponents, per length the muscular cross-section will be greater by a square factor for a longer arm, and muscular length will be greater by a linear factor, which does contribute to strength. Devin has very strong riser, which adds even more to his length. Combining that with his pronation, he will always be higher, and his opponents always hold on to him. He has super matches with shorter arm opponents more than longer ones. This is maybe why he dominates so much. You can see Devin having hard time with Matt Mask, whose arm is as long as Devin's. His riser has to work harder in order to compensate the force applied from long arm of Matt. But it doesn't mean Matt is stronger overall. Same happened with Alex. He pinned Devin several times in a row, but it was on the left, the party arm. To put this simply, in longer arms, the strength gained from longer arm muscles combined with the strength gained from proportionally larger muscles gives the overall advantage to longer arms, even when considering the leverage advantage that the shorter arm has. Meaning larger arms are preferable, not only because of leverage, but also longer arms are preferable because they tend to host a larger muscular platform. By getting higher on the opponent's hand, you are getting a leverage advantage, because the higher you go on someone's lever, the more mechanical advantage you have. This is why they call it a leverage advantage. By skillfully positioning oneself higher on an opponent's hand or arm, a significant leverage advantage can be obtained. This advantageous position allows for greater control over the opponent's movements, effectively limiting their options and increasing the likelihood of success. Try pulling someone with your hand set significantly lower than them. If you want to pronate, you'd have to apply your power through their palm. Almost impossible. Your best option is probably to hook. Conversely, if your hand is set higher, then it's much easier to get into your opponent's fingers. You can also top roll over the top of them. This is what people mean when they talk about leverage, but of course it's not everything. Webbing should be equal at the ready go, and you've got to access that height. A disadvantage of long arms is that the torque applied on the elbow is greater, which may have diminishing outcomes. And I've never seen Devin training his side pressure specifically. Maybe he does, but don't show it. Now notice you can have your wrist, hand and shoulder joints rigid in place and remain safe. That's the whole idea. A fixed, rigid lever transfers the most power. Your biceps and triceps force stabilize your elbow joint. This provides safety and maximum transfer of power. Now you must disperse and transfer energy with your spinal rotations for safety's max power. Long arms provide the longest pin distance. So side pressure hook worsens the situation. For long arm people, high hook is preferable, but leverage is not the only important factor in arm wrestling. Devin can't extend his arms fully because all his arm wrestling and years spent exercising his arms has led to super tight elbow tendons. The fact that the tendons in his elbows are so tight probably gives him an advantage in arm wrestling. You'll notice that a lot of arm wrestlers have arms that are at least slightly bent when at rest, hanging by their sides, and a lot of them probably suffer from something similar to what afflicts Devin. Similarly, James Retards said he can't fully supinate his hands because he's done so much pronation work over his life. When you get open up in certain position over and over again, the tissues will adapt to that manner, and this what the King's move does. This type of muscle contraction is called eccentric training. Better known as negative reps, is performing only the eccentric part of a lift. Almost every exercise there is can be split into the eccentric and concentric phase. The eccentric phase is where the muscles is stretched, while the concentric phase is where the muscle contracts. The one thing you can do to prevent this from happening to you is to exercise your triceps as much as your biceps and to always work antagonist muscles. Realistically, though, you'll always have some level of this going on. Your hands will curl in a bit from exercising your forearm flexors more than your forearm extensors. Your arms will be bent from working your biceps and your fingers will curl from grip exercises. The most you can hope for is that all this simply occurs while your arms are at rest, and that it won't be so bad that it prevents you from extending your arms, hands, or fingers. Strength is one thing, but Devin's long-ass forearm and his ability to manipulate the strap and roll out the King's move are much bigger problems. You can be stronger than him but still lose. Devin's hand is so strong, he has a world-class pronation and rising. He doesn't care if he loses his cup. As long as he has the higher ground, he will survive the hits. Devin's hand dominance enables him to generate maximum leverage when executing a rising motion, propelling his opponents into worse position. It's becoming obvious that all of Devin's unique experimental styles of training that started from the lead-up and the most previous Devin matches, I believe it's finally starting to pay off. It's just taking time for those positive effects to seep into Devin, but now it's begun. The Dave match has proven Devin's training tactics are just starting to pay off. Once that process starts, it'll continue for quite some time